Well, hello. Welcome to Spindle City Straight Talk. I'm Chip.
And I'm CJ.
And it's Wednesday.
It's a day from heck. We had some problems with we've had some problems with the TriCaster this morning, the broadcast system, and you're dropping things.
Part of the ceiling just fell down. No, I'm only kidding. It was my cane, Keith. I see Keith up there. He's panicking. He thought the building fell down.
First off, the rumors of your death are greatly exaggerated.
True. Yeah.
We know that you're going away for a few days.
Going away, yes.
On a long-needed vacation.
Some people would like me to go away for a long time. I know.
We were looking for a temporary fill-in for you, and a comment was made in the request that this may lead to a permanent placement. Not necessarily here on this show. We have several other shows which are coming up that are very interesting, and one of them is a finance show, and the person who was going to originally host it has been advised by their employer that they can't do it full-time as a regular occurrence because of the liability issue, but she can appear on the show as often as she'd like as a guest. So, there may be an opportunity for somebody, give you a little bit of stage time. Stage time. It's all
and let me just interject. You said not necessarily on this show.
Right.
Well, this show will be a two-person show, regardless of what two people are here. Because if another person appears, this show has done. We got a lot of complaints with adding something else.
That's right.
That this show will remain two people.
And I received a phone call yesterday from the infamous low price Lenny Kaplan, who said that this would not be a show worth watching if neither of us were here. So I think you'll get some arguments about that.
So I'm going, I'll let everybody know so the rumors don't fly. I am going in for hip surgery. I am getting a total hip replacement next month, and I will probably miss maybe three shows, maybe 4 max, because I think that I will be required to stay in the hospital for 3 or 4 days, and I'm going in on a Wednesday, so I'll miss that Wednesday, so that Friday show, and I should be I won't be able to drive, so City Hall, make a note of that. I will not be able to drive, so if I do show up on the show in my walker or on crutches, I will be here.
Receiving reasonable accommodation.
Receiving reasonable accommodation, exactly, by Bristol Community College. So that's the status of that. So if I had a few people call me and were very concerned about what was going on with me, and I'm going to be gone. No, it's a hip replacement surgery, and then my cane won't fall anymore after. A few months after that, I will no longer be having difficulty moving around.
I'm sure Jazzy will miss you for those several days.
So let's get into it here.
Well, I know we've got some stories here in front of us, but I think the big one is the rumor mill, the allegations. And in full disclosure, I did reach out to the Fall River Firefighter Union president for comment in regards to these allegations and rumors, and I've yet to hear back from him. But from my understanding, they're trying to make EMS employees Group 4 employees.
And in addition to that, they've given them ranks similar to firefighter ranks, which is another problematic issue here. And Group 4 employees. And obviously you know this, CJ, because you were a Group 4 employee when you worked in corrections.
Correct.
Group 4 employees in the retirement system it's really restricted to police, fire, and corrections.
Yeah, it's a finite category.
Yeah, it's a very, let me explain the reason. Everybody go, you got a special category. Well, there's also those particular occupations also have a mandatory retirement age at 65. You can't stay on the job. You have to get off. The reason that they have Group 4 employees is because, let's face it, Group 4 employees they can retire with a full pension if they have the years, which is around 30, 31 and a half, 32, and depending on their military service, but it's over 30 years, a little over 30 years. If they're at 55 years old and they get the full pension. And the reason they get that, you'll say, oh, geez, that's too young to retire. Well, let me tell you something about firefighting. You know, you don't want to be on a 3-decker roof when you're 60 years old. You don't want to be dragging a line up a stairway if you're 60 years old. You know, they did a study and said that 15 minutes at a working fire was equivalent to a 40-hour work week and the stress on the body, but besides the elevated blood pressures and the smoke and the heat and police officers. You think a 60-year-old police officer is going to be able to chase an 18-year-old perp down the street? He may be able to, but then again, he's not going to do it too often without ending up in the hospital. Same thing with corrections. You're not going to be wrestling 20-year-old inmates to the floor on a daily basis. These jobs are very, very dangerous and high and high-stress jobs. And to be perfectly truthful, they're young men's jobs. You know, you don't see 60-year-old, you may see 60-year-old generals in the military. You don't see 60-year-old SEALs or Special Forces guys or Special Operations guys. When they're Rangers, they're not doing that. You know, you can, Group 4 is a very, as you said, a finite category. And those people, now they supposedly, and this is an allegation at the present time, not only a bunch of pay raises, because I heard from another source today that they got 10 and 11% pay raises with the rank. So let me explain some of the problems with this whole scenario as it is presented today. You know, numerous times I've said that apparently nobody in the city of Fall River has any idea about collective bargaining laws, about civil service laws, and they just put anything they want in the contract to settle it so they maybe can get some votes in the next election. Well, you know, the reality is you can't put them in Group 4 by sticking it in a collective bargaining agreement. It has to be done legislatively, which means that after the fact, again, they're going to go to the city council and ask them to do it. I don't know what reason they can have to put them in Group 4 as paramedics and EMTs. They shouldn't be in Group 4.
Political maneuver.
Yeah, well, they shouldn't be in Group 4. Now, I understand they say this, they got this grand scheme to meld fire and EMS into a fire-based EMS, which was an idea that I had years ago and proposed it. The city didn't want to hear it. But now let's look at what happens. Now if they become firefighter paramedics and firefighter EMTs, they're firefighters, so therefore they are Group 4 employees. But to put them in before they're firefighters into a retirement system that, by the way, the same person who negotiated this contract, Kathy Ann Viveris, is always complaining about the unfunded liability of the pension system, and by moving people from a Group 2 to a Group 4, you've increased the pension liability a ton, because they can all retire 10 years earlier and get into the system. So did anybody do an impact study on that? I'm going to ask for that. Unfortunately, I am going to miss next Wednesday's, the first meeting I have ever missed, because I have to be in Boston for pre-op. But I'm going to ask the executive director to request an impact study on putting these people into the system. If they're firefighters, well, they're automatically Group 4. So they're not waiting, as far as this is speculation, right? I haven't seen a contract. So they're not going to wait until they become firefighters / paramedics. They're going to do it now. They're going to put them in Group 4 as EMS personnel. They're not operating under the hazards of police, fire, or corrections. So why would they be in there until after they become firefighters? Now, we get back to the second piece of this puzzle. The ranks. I've heard they've got lieutenants and captains and maybe even chiefs. How do they manage that when these people become firefighters? If they're a lieutenant in EMS and then they become firefighters, they have to take a firefighter's examination. They have to take the strength test. They have to get through the fire academy, and then they're entry level, first step firefighters. Civil service law requires 3 years as a firefighter in order to take a lieutenant's exam. 3 years of experience. So what do you think the men on the fire department who have to wait 3 years, and I can speak from experience, the first lieutenant's exam that arrived after I got on, I had 2 years and 11 months. And you know what that meant? I was out by 1 month. I couldn't take that exam. I couldn't compete for that job. I had to wait another year for the test and an additional year for that list to expire, because civil service lists were good for 2 years. So that 1 month of experience, an experience that, by the way, you need in order to become a lieutenant, and an experience that you need in order to become a captain, that are part of civil service law, these people don't have, yet they have the rank. So they're going to slide them over? I'm not even sure if that's legal. Because I can tell you one thing, if I was a firefighter or a fire captain on a civil service list, and you had a captain slide over from EMS that never took a civil service exam for that job, didn't have the time and grade as a firefighter to even take a lieutenant's exam, you can bet your bottom I would be in court the next day. And then everybody go, oh, the city's spending so much on lawsuits. It's because they don't have a clue. I don't know what genius came up with this whole scenario, but this is an absolute crap show. And what is it? It's let's make a deal before an election. Everybody got a pay raise. And I've said numerous times, I am absolutely 100% in favor of fire-based EMS. But it has to be done correctly. You have to first establish, and there are cities and towns with 2 lists, a list for firefighter and a list for firefighter/paramedic or EMT. It's called pre-existing conditions of employment. You can't have 2 concurrent lists. You can't actually have a list and give those people who are on the job already a hiring preference if they pass a firefighter exam, if they pass all the requirements, if they get through the training academy, you can give them a job, entry-level job. Not an officer's job, because the officer's jobs and the criteria for taking those tests is part of civil service law. Everything about this is wrong. Everything stinks to the high heavens of politics, of deals. It's wrong. This is not the way this should be done. Should it be done? Absolutely. Should it be done correctly? Absolutely, to the 100th power. It should be done. But is it being done? Now, all these people got new positions and new titles. Are they going to hold them to the residency requirement? I know most of these people do not live in the city of Fall River that have allegedly got 10 or 11% raises. This whole thing is an absolute crap show. Nobody's looked into this. Nobody's gotten legal opinions. The city, again, did it wrong. And then they want the city council, by the way, the city council that says, oh, we don't have any power. Well, guess what? You got the power to put the kibosh on this whole thing and tell them to do it right. Send it back and do it right.
Well, I think this message is very important. Oh, you taxpayer!
And you're right, CJ, because one of the primary elements I said that makes fire-based EMS the way to go is it reduces cost.
Right.
Right now, you have an entire tier of supervisors that are only civilians and only for EMS.
And so not residents.
And most of them are non-residents, exactly. So when you get fire-based EMS, there's no necessity for this tier of administration, because now you're part of the fire department, you're a firefighter /EMT or paramedic, but you're still under the, you'll still be under the direction of the district chief and a captain and whatever, with our rank structure. And there's no necessity for that. But guess what? All these jobs, you know, they're there because somebody knows somebody. And the city, again, will consolidate, supposedly consolidate things, and it ends up costing more money. Yeah. Just look at DCM. We got rid of the trash pickup. We got less work to do, and now we got 2 supervisors. Yeah. We got 2 department heads. So now the fire department is going to move these people into the fire department, pay them more money, but not be able to say it is actually overall cost savings because we eliminated all this tier of supervision because now they're part of the fire department. No, not the city of Fall River. All these people will keep their jobs. And don't believe me, I don't want to see anybody lose their job. But this is why this thing has to be done correctly. It's a phasing process. These people are going to be able, they're going to make a choice. If they're young enough, they can take the firefighter's exam, become a firefighter, paramedic, and then assume the career ladder. If they're toward the end of their career, well, they can work out their career and then retire under Group 2, not Group 4, because a lot of these people don't want to be firefighters. Yeah. And if they're close to retirement, they're going. But they're going with a lot higher pension because now they can retire earlier. Because if somebody's 57 and has got the time on a job in EMS, instead of getting a reduced pension, he's going to get a full pension because now he's a Group 4. There's so many issues in this thing that it's ludicrous. It is absolutely ludicrous. And nobody has wanted to see fire-based EMS more than me. And by the way, I was one of the first firefighters ever to ride in an ambulance. I was an EMT as a firefighter. I was one of the first guys to get EMT certified. And I was one of the first people to ride on an ambulance. And then they civilianized the entire thing. I rode on an ambulance for a very short time because I became a lieutenant shortly thereafter. So I had taken the exam, I made lieutenant. So I was no longer on the ambulance. But I was one of the people. So I appreciate the job they do. I appreciate how hard they work. And it's nothing against them. This is about the fact that, look, they're not Group 4 employees. And they're not lieutenants, captains, and chiefs, because what's going to happen? Nobody's got any vision. What's going to happen 3 years down the line if you do meld these two? Now, like, as I said, you're going to have a lieutenant. He's not going to be a lieutenant. How can he be a fire lieutenant? So you're going to keep him as a EMS lieutenant? Well, EMS will no longer be EMS, a separate entity. It will be part of the fire department. So right off the bat, you got a conflict. It's crap. It's nuts. But look, it's kind of, you know, I just can't wait to see what in an election year, what the city council is going to do with this one.
Well, you know, to me, Chip, it sounds like EMS want their cake and they want to eat it too. You know, they want that Group 4 status, and they want to keep their supervisors separate from the fire department, but be part of the fire department. And, you know, we've always said this before, we have too many chiefs and not enough Indians. And like you said, you know, you made reference to it very clearly. We're the only city I know that can combine 2 departments and not save any money, or bet worse, cut a department in half and double its cost. It makes no sense. But the thing that I think really nauseates me on all of this is, I got an article from Boston Business yesterday, and I spoke with you briefly about it on the phone. And I started looking at cities the same size as Fall River, and I looked at their mayoral salaries. Now, our mayor gets $120,000 a year, which I think is way too much, and I believe that for a long time. And people say, oh, well, he does a lot of work. No, he doesn't. In essence, he doesn't. We have a city administrator. And I'm gonna take Kathy and Viveris out of the loop here. But when we had Bob Connors, when we had Alan Sylvia, we had city administrators. When you had Bob Connors, he was a man who knew labor, who knew contracts.
And even Jim Smith.
Even Jim Smith, exactly. We had people who knew how to run a city. They're basically city managers. The mayor is a figurehead. He's cutting ribbons. He's shaking hands. He's kissing babies. And he's spewing propaganda.
And he's blaming, and he's being like a petulant child when anybody disagrees with him.
Exactly.
He's condemning any city council that has the audacity to question how he's spending money. Well, that's their job,
But you know, the thing that gets me is that when I look at Miami, the #1 worst city in the country, a little more than $90,000 a year.
And that, Miami is a lot larger.
A lot larger than Fall River. Okay? And then you look at Raleigh, North Carolina. How much did I tell you that salary was, Chip?
Oh, 50,
like $52,000.
50-some thousand, yeah.
That's
And Raleigh is probably the most industrialized, and it's the hub of of everything.
Boeing.
And they've implemented all the major insurance companies are in Raleigh. I mean, Raleigh is, if you go, I mean, their airport is Raleigh-Durham Airport.
That's
so
right.
it's like, Raleigh is one of the biggest cities, one of the most viable cities in North Carolina, and their mayor gets basically less than half of what our mayor gets. But they'll never make those comparisons when they want to give him a pay raise.
No, exactly.
They'll compare him with San Francisco and New York City and Boston and all these other high-paid mayors. They're not dumb enough to say, oh, by the way, 95% of the cities in the United States that are the size of Fall River, and most of those cities are better off economically, pay their mayor a lot less than we pay ours.
Right, and the thing is that the mayor of Boston makes $175,000 a year. That's not much more than the mayor of Fall River. And then you hear from the city council all the time, oh, but we have to pay these big dollars, otherwise we won't attract people. We won't attract quality. So far, I don't know where you see the quality, but I don't see any. And, I had come up with the idea, and I started talking to people about it. Maybe the mayor's salary and all department head salaries should be capped by ordinance. And obviously, no politician's going to want to do this, so it's up to the citizens to do. But maybe set the cap at 150, 175, 200% of the city's median income based on U.S. Census guidelines. At 200%, you know what the mayor's salary would be? $62,000 a year.
Look, forgive me if I'm laughing, but the thing is, because again, you're right into the wheelhouse of the double standard. The standard for politicians and political appointees and cronies, and for nepotism, and what working people have to do. When I negotiated, I had to bring in a universe, what they called a universe, to prepare for arbitration. We're going to get an agreement of 10 communities in Massachusetts. See, I couldn't go to West Virginia or Appalachia, or somewhere, and get their salaries, but it had to be in Massachusetts. So I had to take the 9 other communities that were the closest of. That's why I know so much about Newton and some of these other cities, because I had to do exhaustive research on their firefighter contracts, their economic status and stuff. But I wasn't allowed. When I went in, if we went to arbitration and the arbitrator would say, okay, I want to see a comparison study of how you stack up against all the other fire departments of cities of your size in the Commonwealth. If I put down Boston and Springfield and Worcester, you know what he'd say? I'm not accepting this. You're going to try to compare yourself with Boston?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, why not? And it's like, why not? But if you look at the 2 highest paid departments in the state, I don't know if they're still high, but they're always been at the top, which shows you why you can never give government any control over money. The highest paid, or one of the highest, always in the top echelon, is Logan Airport. A federal fire department. A fire department that gets like 1 fire every century up there, But they're one of the highest paid they were, if not the highest paid, and probably out of the last 20 years they've been the highest paid department, probably for 10. But they're always at the top. Why? Because the government loves to give out money. So, but see, we're not allowed to make those comparisons. See, I can't compare myself with San Francisco and Boston, but the mayor can, but the workers don't. The chiefs get all the money. And as you said, let's do a comparison not only of the populations, but let's look at their economic stats in comparison to Fall River, and we will find, without a doubt, that 95% of the cities and towns of our size are economically more viable than we are, and their mayor makes a hell of a lot less than our mayor does.
Exactly.
So throwing money at the problem is always a government fix. But you know what this proves? The moral of this story is that money don't fix it.
No, it doesn't. And, it's interesting. We can't get into a lot of the stuff we want, of the other stories we want to cover. But, according to Pravda, the Amazon's going to be expanding it to 1,800 employees. Now, I spoke with a couple of employees yesterday, and they all said the same thing. I think that there's a handful of people that actually work there from Fall River because they have this thing called Amazon Drive Share, where people can carpool in. And there's nobody from Fall River.
Look, it's an election year. We're going to see headlines like this every other day.
Wait, it gets better. Amazon is going to open corporate offices or corporate annex here in Massachusetts. Do you think they located in Fall River?
No.
Are they going to locate in Avon, Stoughton? No, they're actually asking where to locate in Boston. And currently, the poll is 50-50 between the financial district and Fort Point in Boston for locations.
Right, you're right.
Don't come to Fall River.
But, and the other thing about this thing is, and first let me just segue quickly and say, look, I don't blame the EMS for trying to get a pay raise because that's what they,
that's their job.
Hey, that's their job. And but let's do it right. But, when you look at Amazon, it's ironic because just a day or so ago I watched on the closing of Sears and these other places, and they talked about the impact of things like Amazon on malls and
right.
and even in the Swansea Mall are going to utilize Sears as offices and other malls. They're talking about so these things, yeah, they bring some jobs, but you got to look at the whole picture. You can't just stare at the tree. The fact is that a lot of these things actually do more damage, and especially when they get TIFs and are not contributing anything into the city. They're not employing people from the city, and they're not paying any taxes to the community. But you got to look at what they also impact negatively, just like Market Basket. As we said before, great prediction. I'm putting on my Karnak the Magnificent hat, and I'm going to predict that the South End Stop and Shop will be out of business within a year or two of when the Market Basket opens. So there's a business that has paid taxes in this city for decades, employs mostly Fall River residents, and will go under because we know Shaw's already went under in the South End.
Right.
And a Market Basket will do what Walmarts do to other stores. They undercut them and they'll bury them. So when we look at this stuff, let's not get too excited. Let's get angry. And let's all watch to see what the city council does with this mess they just got handed.
Oh, I can't wait to see what they do next Tuesday with the branding campaign. Hey, we'll see you Friday. Stay angry. Have a great day.